Hello, friends, and welcome to Socratic Spark. Here, we bring you a new and inspiring audiobook every single day. So make sure to subscribe, settle in, and prepare yourself for today's special journey. Have you ever imagined that there could be a man who, in his entire lifetime, never wrote a single word? Not a book, not a letter, not even a line. Yet today, in the world's greatest universities, entire shelves of books are dedicated to studying him? A man who appeared utterly ordinary. Neither a king, nor a general, nor a wealthy merchant. And yet, even after 2,500 years, his name stands at the very top among the greatest thinkers of all time. Yes, we are speaking of Socrates, a name that has become synonymous with philosophy, wisdom, and the relentless search for truth. This audiobook, my friends, will not be a short one. The life and ideas of Socrates cannot be condensed into a few minutes. To attempt that would be like trying to pour the ocean into a single glass. So I ask you, share this episode or save it somewhere so that you can return to it in intervals, absorbing each part fully. Every chapter will take you deeper into the mind of this mysterious man. So fasten your seatbelts, travel back in time with me, and walk the marble-paved streets of ancient Athens, where we meet the man who once declared, "An unexamined life is not worth living." Chapter 1. The mysterious Socrates. Picture yourself in a bustling Athenian marketplace. Marble buildings gleam in the sun. Traders shout to sell their goods. Politicians stand on steps delivering speeches about democracy, and citizens in linen and silk robes pass by. In this crowd, your eyes catch a peculiar figure. He has no sandals. He walks barefoot. His clothes are plain and worn. His face is not strikingly handsome. In fact, his nose is flat, his eyes unusually large. He is clearly not a rich merchant or a powerful leader. What does he do? He walks up to ordinary people and begins to ask strange, piercing questions. To a cobbler, he asks, "What is justice?" To a soldier, he asks, "What is courage?" To a politician, he asks, "What does it mean to be a good citizen?" At first, people try to answer, but very soon his follow-up questions reveal that their answers are hollow, built on assumptions rather than truth. This man had a rare gift. He could make people realize that what they thought was knowledge was, in fact, only opinion. This was Socrates, a man whose very occupation was to challenge the arrogance of false knowledge. The most astonishing part? Socrates himself never wrote a single book, a single letter, or even a single sentence. So how, you may ask, do we know so much about him? The answer lies in the writings of his students, especially Plato and Xenophon. Plato, who later became one of the greatest philosophers in history, was so profoundly inspired by his teacher that he made Socrates the central character in many of his dialogues. It is through these dialogues that the voice of Socrates echoes across millennia, but this raises what scholars call the Socratic problem. How much of what Plato wrote was truly the voice of Socrates, and how much was Plato speaking through his master's mouth? We may never know for sure. It's like reading a biography written not by a neutral historian, but by the most devoted admirer. Some bias is inevitable. And yet, despite this mystery, one thing is crystal clear. Socrates was no ordinary man. He was like a gadfly to the Athenian state, an insect that continually stings a mighty horse, keeping it from falling asleep. Socrates stung Athens with his questions, waking it from a slumber of ignorance. And he declared openly, "I am the wisest man because I know that I know nothing." Think about the courage it takes for someone to stand before a crowd and admit ignorance in society where everyone tries to appear knowledgeable. In our modern world, where everyone competes to prove themselves special, Socrates offers a humbling but powerful lesson. He claimed he was not a teacher who poured knowledge into others. Instead, he compared himself to a midwife, someone who does not give birth herself, but helps others bring forth what is already inside them. Socrates helped people deliver their own truths by questioning, probing, and guiding. Naturally, this habit of his began to irritate the most powerful people. Imagine someone asking sharp questions about the beliefs you've held for decades and proving in front of others that those beliefs rest on shaky ground. Anger is inevitable. But Socrates did not ask questions to humiliate or insult. His purpose was collective discovery, truth-seeking through dialogue. And yet, While this made him beloved among young Athenians, it made him a dangerous enemy in the eyes of Athens' leaders. To the youth, Socrates was a source of both wisdom and entertainment. They followed him around, eager to see him reduce great generals and esteemed politicians to silence with nothing more than carefully chosen questions. But to the city's powerful elite, he appeared as a threat. They began to whisper that Socrates was corrupting the youth, filling their minds with rebellion against tradition and even disrespect for the gods. He had no office, no wealth, no army, only words. Yet with those words, he became dangerous enough that Athens eventually sentenced him to death. So what was it about the seemingly ordinary barefoot man that made him unforgettable to friends and intolerable to enemies? Why did his own city, Athens, a cradle of democracy, turn against him so harshly that they forced him to drink poison? To answer these questions, we must step deeper into the world of Athens itself, the city that created Socrates and then destroyed him. Socrates carried no sword, no shield, no wealth, no office. His weapon was his mind, and his technique was questioning. Today, we call it the Socratic method. Socrates had no physical power, money, or political position. His only power was his sharp mind, and he used questions as his tool. Today, this style is called the Socratic method. This was not idle curiosity. It was a disciplined art of asking questions that revealed contradictions, forced reflection, and uncovered deeper truths. The method is so powerful that even today it is taught in law schools, medical schools, and business schools around the world to sharpen critical thinking. He did not ask questions just for fun. It was a serious and disciplined way to challenge people's ideas, show their mistakes, make them think deeply, and discover hidden truths. Even today, this method is used worldwide in universities to improve critical thinking. Socrates believed he could not pour knowledge into another person's mind. He could only help them bring out the truth already inside. Like a midwife delivering a child, he helped others give birth to understanding. Socrates thought that teachers cannot simply fill students' minds with knowledge. Instead, he believed people already have truth inside them, and the teacher's job is to help bring it out, just like a midwife helps deliver a baby. Here's how it worked. Imagine a general proudly claiming, "I know what courage is. Courage is standing firm in battle, never retreating." For example, suppose a general says, "Courage means standing strong in battle and never running away." Socrates would smile and say, "That is an excellent answer. But tell me, if a soldier retreats not out of fear, but as part of a clever strategy to lure the enemy into a trap, is he a coward?" Socrates would respond kindly and ask, "Good answer, but tell me, if a soldier retreats as part of a smart plan, not out of fear, is he really a coward?" The general would pause and admit, "No, that too could be courageous." The general would think and agree, "No, retreating in that case could also be courage." Socrates would then ask, "So courage is not simply standing firm. Sometimes retreat is also courage. Then tell me again, what is courage?" Socrates would then say, "So courage is not only standing firm. Retreat can also be courage. Then what is courage really?" The general, now uncertain, would try another definition. Socrates would ask more questions, expose more contradictions, until finally, the general was forced to admit that he did not truly know. The general would get confused, try another definition, and Socrates would keep questioning until the general finally admitted he did not really know the true meaning of courage. This process is called elenchus, cross-examination, refutation, the art of testing ideas to their breaking point. Socrates' aim was never to humiliate, but to awaken. He believed that the first step toward wisdom was to recognize one's ignorance. This technique is called elenchus, meaning cross-examination. It is about testing and breaking weak ideas. Socrates' goal was not to insult anyone, but to awaken them. He believed wisdom begins when you admit that you don't know everything. As long as you think you know everything, your mind is closed. But once you admit, "I do not know," then your mind opens and learning becomes possible. If you believe you already know everything, you cannot learn. But if you admit, "I don't know," then your mind opens and real learning can start. This was the magic of Socratic questioning. And this, my friends, was the true reason Athens feared him. This was the power of Socratic questioning. And that, my friends, is why the people of Athens were afraid of him. because he exposed their ignorance. Chapter 4, An Unexamined Life. Until we pause and reflect, the doors of our mind remain closed to new possibilities. Socrates, with the key of his questions, tried to unlock these doors. His method had two main stages. The first was a destructive stage. Here, through relentless questioning, Socrates dismantled false beliefs, shallow definitions, and overconfidence. He would expose contradictions, reveal hidden ignorance, and force people to see that what they thought they knew was incomplete. As we saw with the general who claimed to know the meaning of courage, this stage could feel uncomfortable, even painful, because it wounded a person's pride. But after destruction came construction. Once a person admitted, "I do not know," Socrates would stand beside them, not as an enemy but as a fellow traveler, and begin the search for truth together. Now, the question was no longer about winning an argument. It became a shared journey toward wisdom. Through this process, ideas that once seemed fixed began to expand. Courage, for example, was no longer just about holding one's ground in battle. Perhaps courage could also mean speaking the truth when it is dangerous. Perhaps it meant standing up to injustice in daily life, or even admitting one's own weaknesses. In this way, the Socratic dialogue would move from narrow personal opinion to universal insight. This is the magic of the Socratic method, and it is not something locked in the past. You can use it in your own life today. The next time you catch yourself holding a strong opinion, such as money is everything, or success means getting a high-paying job, pause for a moment. Then, like Socrates, interrogate yourself. Is money really everything? Does health, love, peace, or friendship not count? Can a wealthy person still be miserable? Can someone with little money live joyfully? By questioning your own assumptions, you'll see how incomplete and shallow your first beliefs were. You will begin to understand yourself more clearly. That is the true power of Socratic questioning. It does not only take you outward into the world of politics and philosophy, but also inward into the depths of your own soul. But Socrates did not stop with technique. He used this very method to approach the greatest question of all: what is a good life? And in his trial, he uttered a single line that has echoed through history: the unexamined life is not worth living. This is not just a sentence. It is the heart of Socrates' philosophy. It is the essence of his entire life. These words were spoken during his trial, when he was given a chance to remain silent and save his life. He chose death instead because for him, living without truth, without questioning, without the search for wisdom, was no life at all. So what does it mean to live an examined life? To live an unexamined life is to live on autopilot. Wake up, work, eat, sleep, repeat, never pausing to ask, why am I doing this? What is my purpose? Am I truly happy? Am I becoming a better person? It is to follow society's rules and traditions blindly, pursuing money, power, reputation, without ever questioning whether these truly bring fulfillment. Such a life is mechanical, not human. For Socrates, the difference between humans and animals lies in our ability to reason and reflect. If we do not use this gift, we waste the very essence of being human. To live an examined life, therefore, is to take care of the soul. For Socrates, the soul was far more important than wealth or the body, and caring for the soul meant questioning your actions, desires, and values every single day. Was what I did today just? Were my thoughts noble? Am I becoming a slave to fear or desire? This daily practice was like a spiritual audit. Just as we take our vehicles for servicing or our bodies for medical checkups, Socrates asked, how often do we service our souls? Of course, this process is not easy. When you truly examine your life, you'll uncover uncomfortable truths, your fears, your weaknesses, your mistakes. It is like looking at yourself in a mirror without makeup, painful, even unbearable at times. That is why most people avoid it. They prefer comfort to truth. But Socrates insisted, only through this painful honesty can one live a better, wiser, more authentic life. After all, how can you cure a disease you refuse to diagnose? So, how do we begin? By asking small, sincere questions about our daily lives, our beliefs, our relationships, our habits, our dreams. Are my dreams truly mine, or are they borrowed from society? Do my relationships help me grow as a person? Do my habits bring me closer to my purpose or further away? What values truly matter to me? Truth, love, justice, wealth, or something else? This kind of self-questioning was, for Socrates, the highest form of religion. But once you begin to examine life, another problem arises. By what standard will you measure right and wrong? What is the compass that guides this examination? For Socrates, the answer was his most revolutionary idea. Virtue is knowledge. This idea seems simple, but it is profound and controversial. Socrates claimed that no one does evil knowingly. Whenever people act wrongly, it is only because they are ignorant of what is truly good. In other words, evil is not a choice. It is a mistake born of ignorance. This leads to a powerful conclusion. If wrongdoing is ignorance, then criminals should not be hated but educated. Prison should not only punish but reform. A wrongdoer is not a monster, but a soul lost in darkness, in need of light. This was a radical, humanistic vision, especially in an age when punishment was harsh and merciless. But it also drew criticism. Later philosophers like Aristotle challenged Socrates, arguing that sometimes people know what is right, but lack the willpower to do it. Even today, this debate continues. Is evil the result of ignorance or weakness of will? Whatever the case, Socrates devoted his life to teaching, awakening, and guiding others. But by constantly exposing people's ignorance, he also made powerful enemies. Politicians, poets, and sophists, many of whom he embarrassed in public, came to hate him. Thus, the man who saw himself as a physician of the soul was increasingly viewed as a threat, a corrupter, even a disease. Socrates thought he was curing Athens. Athens thought he was infecting it. This tension would lead, inevitably, to the trial of Socrates, the moment when truth itself was placed on trial. But before we reach that dramatic chapter, we must first meet the disciples who preserved his words and ensured his immortality. Without them, Socrates might have been forgotten. With them, he became eternal. Chapter 5, Virtue is Knowledge. Socrates' assertion that virtue is knowledge and its converse, vice and evil are ignorance, is perhaps his most provocative and widely misunderstood idea. At first glance, this claim seems startling, almost absurd. Does it mean that no one deliberately chooses to do wrong? That every act of evil stems purely from ignorance of what is truly right? This notion challenges our everyday observations. Don't we see people knowingly lie, steal, or cheat, fully aware of the wrongness of their actions? Were Socrates' ideas flawed, or are we misinterpreting what he meant by knowledge? Let's unravel this philosophical mystery with a deeper exploration. For Socrates, knowledge was not merely factual information, bookish learning, or the rote memorization of data, what we might call information today. To him, true knowledge was profound, transformative understanding, a deep and authentic insight into the essence of a thing. Consider the example of a smoker who knows, on a superficial level, that smoking is harmful to their health. Cigarette packs even carry warnings. But does this smoker possess true knowledge in the Socratic sense? According to Socrates, no. If they truly understood, with the depth of their soul, the devastating impact of smoking on their body, their life, and their loved ones, they would be unable to continue. This level of knowledge is so powerful that it overrides base desires, making it impossible to act against it. Thus, when someone smokes despite knowing it's harmful, Socrates would argue they don't truly know. Their understanding is shallow, not rooted in profound awareness that defines Socratic knowledge. Socrates believed that every human, at the core of their being, seeks their own good, happiness, fulfillment, and a flourishing life. No one intentionally chooses misery or suffering. When a person steals, for instance, they're not contemplating the long-term consequences, loss of integrity, respect, inner peace, or freedom if caught. Instead, they're fixated on the fleeting gain, money or material goods, mistaking it for their ultimate good. This, Socrates would say, is ignorance, the failure to discern the true, lasting good from momentary pleasure. This idea carries profound implications. If evil is merely ignorance, then hatred or punishment of wrongdoers is misguided. Instead, we should educate and enlighten them. In Socrates' philosophy, prison should aim to reform, not merely punish. A criminal is not a monster, but a person whose soul is sick, lost in the darkness of ignorance. They need guidance, not condemnation. A revolutionary and deeply humane perspective, especially in an era dominated by retributive justice. Socrates urged society to fight ignorance, not the ignorant, and to create systems that foster virtue and wisdom. However, this view isn't without critics. Aristotle, Plato's student, challenged it with the concept of akrasia, weakness of will. He argued that people can know what's right yet fail to act on it due to overpowering emotions or desires. Think of someone on a diet who knows eating cake is unwise but succumbs to temptation. This debate, whether evil stems from ignorance or a lack of willpower, remains alive in philosophy today. What do you think? Can someone knowingly choose evil, or is every wrong act a product of ignorance? Socrates' answer was clear. True knowledge of the ultimate good makes wrongdoing impossible, as it naturally guides one to virtue. This conviction became Socrates' life mission, to awaken people from ignorance and lead them to self-knowledge. But constantly telling people they're ignorant doesn't win hearts. His relentless questioning made him unpopular with Athens' powerful elite, who began to see him as a troublemaker rather than a reformer. This sets the stage for the next chapter, where Socrates becomes a gadfly of Athens, stinging the city awake, at great personal cost. Chapter 6. The Gadfly of Athens. Imagine a massive, lazy horse, content to slumber despite its strength, until a tiny gadfly stings it repeatedly, forcing it to move. During his trial, Socrates used this vivid metaphor to describe himself as Athens' gadfly, sent by the gods to rouse the city from its moral and intellectual slumber. It's a fitting and powerful image that encapsulates both his mission and his downfall. A gadfly's role is to provoke, to disturb, to make the horse uncomfortable so it can reach its potential. Socrates played this role for Athens, relentlessly questioning its citizens, politicians, poets, craftsmen, and philosophers about their cherished beliefs. He asked what justice, beauty, or truth really meant, exposing gaps in their understanding. His goal wasn't to humiliate, but to prevent Athens from stagnating, to push its people to live up to their responsibilities as citizens of a great city-state. Yet, as any horse might swat an annoying gadfly, Athens grew weary of Socrates' provocations. His method, the Socratic method, involved asking probing questions that often left prominent figures speechless, especially in front of impressionable youths. To a proud politician accustomed to adoring crowds, this was humiliating. Socrates amassed powerful enemies, politicians, poets, and sophists whose livelihoods he threatened by exposing their shallow wisdom. The danger of his gadfly role intensified during Athens' turbulent times. After losing the Peloponnesian War and enduring the brutal rule of the 30 tyrants, the city was gripped by fear and suspicion. Socrates' relentless questioning was seen as a threat to stability, accused of inciting rebellion among the youth and disrespecting traditional gods. Some of his students, like Alcibiades and Critias, became notorious figures in Athens' troubles, giving his enemies ammunition to blame him, though he wasn't directly responsible. Socrates saw himself as Athens' greatest benefactor, a doctor administering bitter medicine to cure the city's ailments. But to many, he was a disease, a virus undermining social order. This clash of perspectives, noble intent versus perceived threat, set the stage for a conspiracy against him. A legal trap was being woven to silence him forever. Yet Socrates' story isn't just his own. It's also about those who preserve his legacy, particularly his disciples. Who were they, and how did they shape our understanding of Socrates? Let's find out in the next chapter. Chapter 7. The Guru whose disciple immortalized him. Socrates never wrote a word, yet his ideas echo through history thanks to his disciples Xenophon and Plato. Without them, Socrates might have faded into obscurity. Their accounts, however, paint contrasting portraits of the man, raising the question, who was the real Socrates? Xenophon, a historian and soldier, portrayed Socrates as a practical, ethical teacher. In works like Memorabilia and Apology, Xenophon's Socrates is a grounded figure who offers sage advice, urging youths to live disciplined lives and honor their parents. He's a traditional Greek mentor, focused on making good citizens. Xenophon's writings defend Socrates against his accusers, presenting him as a law-abiding, respectable man, not a radical. Plato, however, offers a different vision. A brilliant philosopher himself, Plato was profoundly affected by Socrates' death, dedicating his life to expanding his teacher's ideas. In his dialogues, Socrates is a central figure, not just a moral guide, but a metaphysical giant. Plato's Socrates debates profound concepts like the immortality of the soul, the nature of justice, and the theory of forms. He's intellectual, enigmatic, and revolutionary, far more complex than Xenophon's version. So, who was the real Socrates? Scholars believe the truth lies between these accounts. Plato's early dialogues, like Apology, Crito, and Euthyphro, likely reflect the historical Socrates, emphasizing his questioning method and claim of ignorance. In later works like the Republic and Phaedo, Socrates voices grand theories, likely Plato's own ideas attributed to his manner out of respect. Plato didn't deceive us. He took Socrates' seeds of inquiry and grew them into a philosophical system, immortalizing his teacher as a towering figure. Without Plato, Socrates might have been a footnote in history. Through his genius, Plato ensured his guru's legacy endured, making Socrates a symbol of relentless truth-seeking. But this legacy led to a tragic climax: Socrates' trial, where truth itself faced judgment. Let's step into that courtroom in the next chapter. Chapter 8. The Trial Where Truth Was in the Dock. In 399 BCE, a packed Athenian courtroom hosted a trial that would echo through history. Socrates, a 70-year-old man in simple clothes and bare feet, stood accused before a jury of 501 citizens. This was no ordinary trial. It was a moment when Athens judged its own conscience, pitting philosophy against power. The outcome would shape Western thought forever. Socrates faced two grave charges, brought by a man named Miletus. The first was Asabia impiety, alleging that Socrates rejected Athens' gods and invented new deities. In ancient Greece, disrespecting the gods was believed to invite divine wrath upon the city. The second, more insidious charge was corrupting the youth, claiming Socrates' teachings incited rebellion against family, tradition, and the state. These accusations struck at the heart of his life's work. When Socrates defended himself, he didn't plead for mercy or parade a weeping family before the jury, as was common. Instead, he did what he'd always done. He philosophized. His defense, immortalized in Plato's Apology, was less about saving himself and more about challenging the jury to confront truth. Apology here doesn't mean an apology, but a defense speech in the Greek sense. Socrates explained that his questioning began with the Delphic oracle's claim that no one was wiser than he. To understand this, he interrogated Athens' supposedly wise men, only to find their wisdom shallow. His own wisdom, he said, lay in knowing his ignorance. Far from corrupting the youth, Socrates argued he was teaching them to examine their lives, the most essential human task. He famously declared, "An unexamined life is not worth living." He likened himself to a gadfly sent by the gods to keep Athens awake. Killing him, he warned, would harm the city more than himself, as another like him would be hard to find. This bold stance, however, was seen as arrogance. The jury, ordinary citizens, felt mocked by his intellectual honesty. By a narrow margin, they found him guilty. In Athenian law, both accusers and the accused proposed punishments, and the jury chose. The accusers demanded death. Socrates could have suggested a fine or exile to save himself, but instead, he shocked the jury. He proposed that Athens reward him with free meals at the Prytaneum, an honor reserved for heroes and Olympic champions. This was seen as an insult, and the jury, by a larger margin, sentenced him to death by hemlock. Socrates' trial was a clash of ideals: truth versus tradition, philosophy versus politics. His fate was sealed, but his story wasn't over. What happened in the month between his sentencing and execution? Did he consider escape? Let's explore in the next chapter. Chapter 9. He did not abandon his principles even in the face of death. Socrates, now a convicted criminal, awaited death in an Athenian prison. His sentence: to drink hemlock, a poison that slowly numbs a body. Due to a religious custom, no executions could occur while a sacred ship was away at Delos. A month passed between the sentencing and death. This period was the ultimate test of Socrates' philosophy, where his actions spoke louder than his words. One morning before dawn, his wealthy friend Crito slipped into his cell. Crito had bribed the guards and arranged a ship to whisk Socrates to safety. He pleaded with Socrates to flee, arguing that his death would leave his friends bereft, his children orphaned, and his enemies victorious. Crito's pleas were heartfelt and logical. Most would have yielded. But Socrates' response, recorded in Plato's Crito, revealed the depth of his principles. He urged Crito to set aside emotions and reason about what was right. Socrates argued that fleeing would betray his lifelong commitment to justice and law. Athens' laws had given him life education and rights. By living there, he'd implicitly agreed to abide by them, even if their judgment was unjust. He imagined the laws personified, confronting him. "Socrates, are you destroying the laws that made you? Can a citizen obey only when it suits them?" Such actions, he said, would unravel the state itself. Socrates insisted that responding to injustice with injustice, breaking the law to escape an unfair verdict, was wrong. He'd live by principles and wouldn't abandon them, even at death's door. When the day of execution arrived, his friends gathered, grieving, but Socrates was serene, as if preparing for a celebration. He discussed the soul's immortality, arguing that death was merely liberation from the body's constraints. When the jailer brought the hemlock, weeping at the loss of the noblest prisoner he'd known, Socrates drank it without hesitation. As the poison spread, numbing his body, Socrates' final words were to Crito, "We owe a cock to Asclepius. Don't forget to pay it." Asclepius was a god of healing, and such offerings were made for recovery from illness. Perhaps Socrates meant that death was a cure for life's ailments. With that, he fell silent forever. A man died, but an idea was born, one that would resonate for millennia. Chapter 10, Socrates' Legacy. Nearly 2,500 years have passed since Socrates' death, yet his name and ideas endure. Athens' golden age is now history, its marble monuments reduced to ruins, but Socrates' spirit lives on, in our thoughts, our education, our pursuit of justice. In today's noisy, information-saturated world, his relevance is greater than ever. Let's explore his legacy and why it matters. Socrates' greatest gift is critical thinking. Before him, knowledge was passed unquestioned from teacher to student. He shattered this tradition, teaching us to challenge authority, tradition, and assumptions with reason. Today, when we encourage children to ask why, or scientists demand evidence, we echo Socrates. In an era of misinformation and social media, his method, questioning sources, seeking truth, and considering alternative perspectives, is a vital shield. His second legacy is the fusion of ethics and self-knowledge. Socrates taught that a good life isn't about wealth or fame, but caring for one's soul. Know thyself was his mantra, urging us to examine our values and live by them. In a world plagued by stress and disconnection, his call to reflect, to pause and listen to our inner voice, offers a path to meaningful living. Finally, Socrates exemplifies intellectual courage. He could have saved himself by compromising, but he chose death over betraying his principles. His stand inspired figures like Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr., who resisted unjust laws with peaceful defiance. Socrates shows us that truth and integrity are worth any cost. Socrates didn't provide answers. He taught us to ask better questions. He didn't point to a destination, but showed us the path of inquiry. His legacy lives when a journalist challenges power, a scientist questions dogma, or we reflect on our own lives. Socrates isn't just a man, he's a mindset, a torch guiding us from ignorance to wisdom. Conclusion: how to awaken the Socrates within. Our journey through Socrates' life has taken us from Athens' bustling streets to the somber courtroom, from his stinging questions to his serene death. Now the question is, how can we awaken the Socrates within us in our fast-paced modern lives? The answer lies in adopting simple yet transformative habits. First, cultivate the habit of questioning. Not just others, but yourself. Ask, why do I believe this? Is there a better way? Questioning turns you from a passive consumer into an active thinker, sparking growth in work, relationships, and personal development. Second, embrace intellectual humility. Admitting I don't know opens a door to learning. Treat differing views as opportunities, not threats, and engage in dialogue to understand, not to win. Third, examine your life regularly. Set aside time to reflect through journaling, meditation, or quiet thought. Analyze your actions, values, and happiness. This servicing of the soul ensures a purposeful life. Finally, stand firm in your principles, especially when it's hard. Identify your core values, honesty, justice, or compassion, and hold fast, even at personal cost. A life without principles, like an unexamined life, isn't worth living. Becoming Socratic requires courage, discipline, and persistence, but it transforms you into a conscious, responsible individual. Socrates' story ends, but yours begins here. His life teaches us that questioning, reflecting, and standing for truth can make us better humans. If a story has sparked a question in you, share it. Keep the flame of inquiry alive, for the journey of knowledge never ends